Hello, Dr. Sutton. This is John Brand, and today I'm going to talk to you about thermonuclear propulsion. So, to start out, I'm going to give a brief introduction. We're going to talk about types of rocket propulsion, what is specific impulse, what is a thermonuclear rocket engine, how does a thermonuclear engine work, what are some of the advantages and disadvantages, and then I'm going to conclude everything. So first we're going to talk about the different types of rocket propulsion. First is going to be the standard one that everybody thinks of is a chemical rocket. In a chemical rocket you have two different types. You have liquid propulsion and solid propellant. So in liquid propulsion you have a liquid oxidizer and a liquid fuel that gets combined together and burned inside of a combustion chamber and then sent out through the nozzle, creating thrust. A solid propulsion uses a solid fuel and a solid oxidizer chemically combined together and then packed inside of a rocket, and it will burn all the way through until there's no more fuel or oxidizer to burn, and then it gets sent out through the nozzle in the bottom. Next we have electrical propulsion. I'm not going to go into too much detail about, but it is used mostly on small probes and satellites. You also have thermal propulsion. In thermal propulsion, you have solar and nuclear, but we're going to break away nuclear today and kind of talk about it a little bit more in detail. So we're going to start out by talking about specific impulse. Specific impulse is used to show the efficiency in a rocket engine. So chemical rockets have a specific impulse around 450 seconds, and that is really good, especially for a chemical rocket. In contrast, a nuclear propulsion rocket has an impulse around 850 to 1,000, so more than twice, almost 3 times the amount. So what impulse is basically your average exhaust speed divided by the standard gravity. So in layman's terms, it is the amount of push that you get per fuel that you're burning, essentially. So you can kind of see a graph over here showing the different specific impulse to the amount of thrust that you're getting, and you will notice that nuclear, you still get a good amount of thrust with a really high specific impulse. So what is a thermonuclear rocket engine? Right here is just a drawing showing a thermonuclear engine. You'll see the layout's very similar to a standard chemical rocket, where you still have your nozzle, and then instead of having a combustion chambers where you have your reactor, and then you have a pump that will pump the hydrogen into the reactor. So how does the thermonuclear rocket engine work? So here you see we have a schematic showing the engine. Up here at the top is going to be your liquid hydrogen tank. It is going to be pumped the liquid hydrogen into the reactor. You'll notice the way that the fluid is pumped, it goes through the jacket of the nozzle, then up into the nuclear reactor. So the nuclear reactor will heat hydrogen up to 55,000 Kelvin. So the components inside this engine get incredibly hot. So that is the first purpose of pumping this hydrogen in there, is to cool the jacket of the nozzle and just keep it from wearing. It also serves a second purpose because as it is cooling the nozzle, it's also being preheated as it comes into the nuclear reactor. Makes it much more efficient heating up process. Once it is heated up to around 55,000 Kelvin, it is going to be forced out through the nozzle and out the back, creating thrust. So what are some of the advantages and disadvantages to a thermonuclear? The advantages is, like we were talking about before, super high specific impulses, making it a very efficient rocket engine. With this kind of efficiency, you're able to travel much further than we have in the past in going out to different parts of the solar system or even beyond. Some of your disadvantages is that uranium-235 fuel creates dangerous waste that has to be taken care of. You're also seeing extremely high temperatures that wear apart really quickly, so that drives up the cost. So these aren't exactly cheap, but the advantages, we do believe, outweigh the disadvantages, and you're going to be seeing thermonuclear propulsion in many spacecraft in the future. So in conclusion, the main advantage for thermonuclear propulsion is the higher specific impulse, making it super efficient, meaning that you can travel much further into the solar system. We kind of talked about some of the advantages and disadvantages. The biggest disadvantage being the extreme heat that these parts see, so you're driving up your cost on it. And then next, how does this relate to 4410? So throughout the semester, we've kind of talked about different ways of creating energy, and this rocket is essentially using a nuclear reaction to heat up the propellant and sending it out the back. It's a really fascinating subject. I've really enjoyed doing some research into it, and I really appreciate your time, and have a wonderful day.